Disclaimer: this video is of humorous nature only. The author does not seek to insult or humiliate anyone. The video may contain profanity. People under the age of 16 should refrain from watching this video. Story 1. That would be confusing. Okay, so if everyone can read each other's thoughts, wouldn't you be reading your own thoughts or something? Like, if you're talking to someone and they're reading your thoughts and you're reading their thoughts, wouldn't you be reading them, reading yours, and vice versa? Wait, now I'm confused. But like, logic aside, it would probably be chaotic. I mean, if everyone was a morally good person, then life would be much better. But everyone isn't a morally good person. People suck. I guess like people could understand people with mental health issues more. But then again, abusers could also get an upper hand. Like, it would be bad, but also good. So complete chaos. Edda. I'm sorry if my comment caused arguments. I'll just edit the good is subjective thing out. Story 3. Day 1 would be wild. Many relationships would end. And scams and deception would immensely decrease, not sure if totally cease to exist depending on the limit of mind reading. Can it work through videos or phone calls? But I think people will find a way to work around it. Assuming even you can read all the thoughts. Every layers of intention of people. Most of the time, you might not tend to do it. Your brain would overload, so people would limit their reading just for superficial thoughts. What's happening in their brain at that moment? Then the scammers have to use method acting, making themselves really believe the lie they feed themselves. I think scams will remain, just getting more difficult to do so. Also, super deluded, people will be our blind spot. We might believe things more easily, since superficially, it seems that lies are impossible. But in reality, there are many other ways you can be tricked. I speculate people will become more gullible. Man, this could be a great novel. Story 4. Spoilerish for 3 body problem, so we'll try to be broad. The Trisolarans communicate with visual patterns which express every thought and feeling they have, creating a society in which lying is an alien concept to them. Because of this, they are wholly unified in their efforts. When they discover that humans can say deliberately misleading things, they immediately become terrified of them, and so begins the main conflict. Imagine the power of a liar in a world where everyone tells the truth. But to get back on topic, I think if we had evolved with it from our primitive times, we would be a lot more unified and collectivist, as we would all know the true intentions of those around us. And there could probably even be a skill in selective thinking where individuals could put up a screen of banal thoughts to hide deeper, more secret ones. If it happened tomorrow, though, anarchy. Maybe things could be better when the dust settles. But it would take generations to get used to. Story 5. I think humanity would be able to operate better. Morally, intellectually, socially, politically, lying would be much more obvious, and we would know that they know that we're lying. So people would probably be more inclined to just tell the truth. We would be able to understand others' perspectives better and potentially have more empathy. We'd all become a bit more accepting of everyone. Misinformation would be impossible. I saw a clip where someone cropped a video of Biden to make it look like he was staring off into space and had to be wrangled by an arm. It was obviously fake to me because I had already seen the original Biden was talking to some dude that was cropped out. But someone who hadn't or couldn't know any better would be able to see right through things like that if they could read the poster's thoughts. I think humans would be better off. We'd be better off now if people didn't expect mind reading. Story 6. We'd kill each other. Imagine a world where everyone has access to everyone else's worst thoughts, impulses, and emotions. We'd kill ourselves because we're surrounded by people whose thoughts are often hostile, mean, and unpleasant. Kill others because we'd be largely unable to know which thoughts will just stay thoughts and which would become actions for baseline anatomically modern humans. Our ability to function as a species would have the floor blown out from under it. We'd be a social species that is completely unable to socialize. Children picking up every time their parent wishes they weren't born, or is being incessantly annoying or just a little crap. parents picking up their kids, hating them wholesale, because they're kids, and they have to learn how to navigate big new emotions. But you still read those thoughts as they are. We die out and consider it a blessing to be free from everyone else's thoughts at the mere expense of our own. Story 7. I feel like all the mayhem of being able to hack into accounts and political stuff aside, we would have a way more stoic, realistic, and thorough understanding of the darker side of people, and would be way better at accepting negative aspects of psychology and reality because we would be surrounded by it. You would be way less affected by someone thinking you're ugly and annoying when you're bombarded by random thoughts others have at a given moment. Ironically, I feel like it could create a better level of respect for other people's intellectual autonomy. They can and have a right to be able to think whatever they want and how we feel about it, and whether we want to listen is up to us, not to them to filter their thoughts and cleanse their mind off undesired thoughts. Story 8. I think parents could parent better, knowing the exact needs of a baby and small child, which would produce happier, healthier children, very strongly bonded to both parents and, in time, better adults too. I think cheating would decrease, because you couldn't hide it, unless society changed to just do who you want whenever. Crimes would be solved easier, but I also think people would have a lot more control over their own minds to keep them private, and you could know if someone was sneaking up you before they made a sound or spoke, so you would have the advantage maybe. Life would be different for sure. I think the positives would outweigh the negatives. Otherwise, fashion would just change to wear a tinfoil hat everywhere. Story 9. I think in many aspects, society would crumble from fraud skyrocketing to knowing sensitive information. However, I think after falls apart, many die. I think it would build back as smaller communities, with much more ethical behavior. No people using religion for own end, no duping people or scams. It would be better with bad people likely removed from society, exiled before causing harm. It would make many of scenarios where people are devoid of empathy much harder to be like that. Police interactions, people's interactions with homeless. I think it would reform for better, but not before current system fell apart. Story 10. I think you've missed the fact that through social media we can actually read each other's thoughts, and that the changes we're seeing in the world are a direct result. Since the first printed word, humans have been able to read each other's thoughts. However, now that the internet and social media connect billions of people, we all have the same ability to influence others by posting our thoughts. It's rather like science fiction if you stop to consider that any idea can reach people around the world in mere moments. We call it going viral. Story 11. So much less mental health effect. An awful lot of folks suffer from not being able to communicate what they are going through. Folks in grief have their grief understood. Folks with anxiety have folks around them to help. Depression? Marital miscommunication? Communication helps both. And scam artists might think they can work the system, but everyone will see them for what they are. Same for cheating spouses. No hiding that anymore. Heck, cheating on college tests would be unnatural, as you'd be able to read the professor's mind for that exam. Mixed bag. Story 12. Imagine walking along the street and passing somebody on their way to commit a crime. You could telepathically hear their plans. That would really be something. Also, meeting someone who supported a team other than yours or had ideas contrary to yours. Anti-vaxxer meets fully vaxxed. Flat earther meets normie. Different politics, sports team, gender, intimituality. Yikes. Nope. It would not be good, but the population would quickly be under control, and everyone would have to wear headwear made of the same stuff as those RFID wallets to prevent others from hearing your thoughts. Story 13. You might like the book series called Chaos Walking by Patrick Ness, which, without spoiling, basically explored this topic. The first book in the series, The Knife of Never Letting Go, does an absolute stunning job of introducing us into a world like this. This was one of my favorite books growing up, and the style of writing is just absolutely unique. Definitely recommended. He movie wasn't so great, but it wasn't really their fault. It is so difficult to translate the writing into film. Story 14. Have you heard of the chaos theory? It would become our daily reality. We already are plagued by what-ifs and what would someone think's questions throughout our life. If we actually start knowing them, it's going to be a disaster. At least when unknowns, we have the power to make positive assumptions and move on. And that in turn leads to people also changing their thoughts about you. But if there's nothing positive to assume, it's an endless loop of despair. Have you seen the Black Mirror episode around star ratings? Story 15. I really think it would fall apart completely. Think about much society is actually propped up by deception. How many job offers would you get, for example, if your hiring manager knew you were thinking, I just need the money? Or, I don't really care about the work, I just need to pay the bills. I think deep down we all know, but we have to put up the facade. Those that don't are those that wind up unemployed. Story 16. There would be no need to come up with elaborate ways to express ideas and emotions. There would eventually be less conflict because people would have the ability to fully see the world from another's perspective. They would eventually reach some sort of understanding and unity in values and opinions and complete mutual respect. Discussions and arguments as we know them wouldn't be necessary only pure search for truth. Education would be really fast and effective. Story 17. We'd stay well the duck away from each other. I think Stanislav Lem had a short story on the subject. It's been a long while since I read it, but it started with a guy discovering a cubical planet housing the most advanced civilization in existence. The rest is literally Duck Around Find Out featuring your question exactly. Or was it that people could feel each other's emotions? One or the other. Story 18. It'd be like a never-ending live stream of unfiltered honesty. Privacy would vanish, replaced by a constant barrage of opinions and desires. Relationships might crumble under the weight of brutal truths, while empathy could soar as we truly understand each other's struggles. Trust would become a rare gem, and social dynamics would shift dramatically. It's a fascinating concept, but I wonder if we'd truly be ready for such raw transparency in our daily lives. Story 19. We would not have the mental capacity to handle the combined thoughts of everyone in the room. However, if we could read each other's thoughts, some, if not all, would become paranoid or insane. To survive, I believe humans require some degree of independence and privacy. Knowing that the person in front of you can hear your intrusive thoughts would be terrifying. Story 20. I think people will start disagreeing less with one another as they fear what the other person might do. I think people will just censor their own unsavory thoughts and opinions. On the bright side, I will feel like corruption will decrease. Why? Politicians and leaders would be unable to hide their true agendas or corrupt practices as people can read their thoughts, potentially leading to a more honest and transparent political system. Story 21. Society would be a complex mix of positive and negative changes. Increased empathy and understanding. We could directly grasp others' emotions and perspectives, potentially fostering stronger relationships and reducing conflict. Loss of privacy and authenticity. Constant mental exposure could be overwhelming, leading to anxiety and a decline in genuine interactions. Power struggles and manipulation. Those skilled at reading minds could exploit others, creating a society rife with suspicion and distrust. Story 22. It depends. If you mean that we were able to read each other's thoughts from the start, at this point it would be an entirely different society. Probably dramatically more open, warm, and supporting. But if we would acquire this skill suddenly, like right now, it would be a total disaster. Probably a lot of couples and families would break up almost instantly, as well as countries, governments, and financial systems. Story 23. Society would likely become much more transparent and honest, as there would be no room for deception or secrets. However, it could also lead to a loss of privacy and potentially cause a lot of conflict and tension, as people would constantly be exposed to each other's innermost thoughts and feelings. It would definitely be a huge adjustment and could potentially have far-reaching implications on relationships, interactions, and societal norms. Story 24. If this was a case from the start, Humanity would very much be a led by the masses society out of fear of being ostracized, or would have died out pretty quickly. If this just suddenly happened, imagine the purge happening all at once until a good percentage of the population is gone, then starts segregating itself into like-minded societies, creating new governments. Story 25. I think we'd learn to control them more and develop strategies to blur mask them, so others couldn't understand them. I imagine others would weaponize the ability to get into others' heads as well, and the notion of telepathic abuse would be a thing. Generally, I think society would adapt to harness this as a communication tool if it was natural. If it happened suddenly, right now, there'd be chaos. Story 26. That would be disastrous if not severely standardized, and will initiate a hive mind processing. Thoughts should be privy to you as it drives the creativity and uniqueness of a person. A society functions with people in a spectrum where there are extremists and conservatives present and everyone in between. If thoughts be made public, the opposing sides would clash, or the in-betweens will force everyone to become standardized. Story 27. If we could all read each other's thoughts, society would be a wild ride. No more secrets. Every awkward date, office meeting, and family dinner would be an open book. Politicians couldn't lie, and friendships would get real honest, real fast. But let's face it, we'd all be begging for some privacy and wearing tinfoil hats to get a break from the noise. Story 28. Privacy would be a joke, right? Everyone tiptoeing around trying not to offend or be judged. Probably less misunderstands, though. But daydreaming at work? A minefield. And dating? Forget about it. Even faker than it already is. Authenticity would be scarce, and headaches from constant noise. Quite the dystopia. Story 29. Humanity genuinely couldn't handle it. Like our world and society would pretty much immediately crumble if we all of a sudden could read each other's thoughts. Do y'all realize just how many people are disingenuous most of the time? The whole world runs on fake. So once you make it to where someone can't be fake, crap falls apart real quick. Story 30. Realistically, there would be civil war in many countries for a while. Being able to read the government's mind would permanently change everything. After the smoke clears, it would probably end up being similar to having intimate or stripping naked. Both are frowned upon to do in public, and both are a crime if you do it to someone without consent. Story 31. Over time, I think everyone would be a lot less judgmental of others. If everyone frequently thinks things that are embarrassing or just plain weird, people would adjust and slowly become unfazed. Either that, or people would get really good at repressing their thoughts, which is a whole other can of worms. People with intrusive thoughts are ducked, though. Story 32. There's a really interesting movie similar to this topic called Minority Report. I think there are certain things you think about that you will never act on. We have a filter that lets us process. I think a lot of people would end up in jail if anyone and everyone could read our every fleeting thought. Story 33. Justice system would go a lot smoother and quicker. Less innocent people in prison and, simultaneously, more people in prison, no doubt. New task force. The thought police there probably wouldn't be game shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? We would most likely view privacy differently. Most likely a lot of chaos. Story 34. It would be absolutely weird and unusual at first to hear other people's real and unfiltered thoughts, but like everything else, I think we'd accept it as normal and go about our day. It's quite similar to a movie called Chaos Walking, where everything becomes normalized and people abuse the ability. Story 35. It would be absolute chaos until we all started grouping into like mind groups, and we become more hive-minded over time. Think about it. The collective minds would become greater than its parts. First, there would be the sorting, isolation, and culling. So, much like a retirement community in Florida. Story 36. Everyone would understand how screwed up everyone else is, and there would be a huge equalizing effect. We would accept each other and our humanity more. Also, thoughts aren't concrete things. They're oftentimes fleeting flashes of emotions. I think people would ultimately tire of feeling other people's emotions. Thank you all for watching. Watch even more great stories on my channel.